Hi, everyone. Welcome to Studio Jake. I, of course, am your host, Jacob Airy. We've got a lot to talk about this week. We're going to have this episode. It's kind of going to be off topic a little bit. I don't usually talk about sports, and I don't talk about politics a lot on this channel, but we're going to go a little off topic because just some really big, important things that have happened just in this past week. And so we're going to cover that. And helping me cover it today, I've got a very special guest. I've been reading her columns forever now. I can't remember a time when after I became a conservative that I didn't read DC McAllister. She's a contributor on PJ Media and dailywire.com, where, of course, you can find my columns, as I like to call them. You can find her there as well as on the Twitter at McAllister Den, and she co-authored a book, Spygate, so definitely check that out. Denise, welcome to Studio Jake.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
So we're going to jump right into it. So the NFL has started. The preseason is over. They're going into the games. And it seems like the NFL is bound and determined to alienate their audience with their new rules. They tried to kind of placate the rules with some new Pledge of Allegiance, or not pledge, national anthem rules. They were trying to placate their audiences by passing a rule, but then the players remain defiant. And there doesn't seem to be a lot of punishment for the players. Like, I don't think necessarily they should be banned or told they can't play, but they should at least be fined if they're going to do this. What is this signal that the players just aren't registering that their fans want them there for the Pledge of Allegiance? I mean, is it just a lack of what's the word I'm looking for? Just they're not aware of what their audience is or who it is?
I think it's a lack of respect for the audience. And they care more about their message, their agenda, than they do about the game to a degree, and definitely about the paying customers and the fans. I mean, these people love the NFL. I grew up watching the NFL. I love football. I'm a little weird that way as a woman, but I love football. But I don't like sitting down and seeing politics stain and ruin my game from the very beginning. And so I think, but they don't care, because now is the day of social justice warriors making a statement. I think there's a whole lot of bored liberals out there who need something to fight for. And, this is one of the platforms. They're using movies. They're using, Hollywood has been doing it forever, but they're using a lot more. You have country music, pop music, all of it, and now NFL. And it's to elevate this higher consciousness that they all have about racism that's just been going on since, the civil rights movement afterwards, when that real part of civil rights movement, the fighting for real civil rights, to this time of Black power that we had through the years and decades. And now it's just more about beating back, white privilege than it is about anything else. And it gives them a sense of purpose and accomplishment and awareness and group dynamics. They're in the in group, and it makes them feel special. And I think there's a lot of factors that go into it.
And, one thing, too, is, something was up when they tapped, this was a couple of years ago, but they tapped the Black Eyed Peas to do the halftime show at the Super Bowl. And they did terrible because I guess their lip sync machine was turned off. But, it's
terrible already.
Right, yeah, exactly. But to me, when that happened, like, okay, Katy Perry, I guess she kind of has like a cross appeal. Janet Jackson and Justin Timberlake certainly did not, but I feel like
it just gives me the cringes every time I even think about it.
Yeah, me too. And it's just like, it makes me go, do the NFL not know who their audience is? I mean, why aren't they booking Brad Paisley or Carrie Underwood or heck, even Taylor Swift? Like I said, I get Katy Perry a little bit, because then you might get some of the kids who are just watching it to appease their parents and things like that. But I feel like the fact that they did not fire Roger Goodell, who has seen 2, now 3 seasons in a row with really poor ratings, I'm wondering if there's just this, because to me, the people at the top should be concerned about the money. Like you said, the players kind of have a lack of respect, but I feel like the people at the top, what are they thinking? They can't recruit more football players from college if it comes down to it?
Well, they're afraid of players. I mean, they're afraid of the machine, the propaganda machine. They're afraid of this whole leftist movement that's intimidating. I mean, money goes a long way. And yes, we live in a capitalist society, and we think everyone who's in business is going to be motivated by money. And normally they are. But all you have to do is look at CNN, MSNBC, a lot of television shows, a lot of movies that just are garbage, but yet they're still put out there. They don't make any money. The higher-ups know it's not going to make any money, but they do it anyway. And I think it just shows the power of suggestion of this movement, that you have to be a part of this group. It's about status. And, they don't want that threatened, and they're willing to lose money to maintain their status among that group of people. And they will throw anything under the bus to be able to retain that, because people ultimately want to be accepted. Mm-hmm. They don't want to be in the out group. And these owners are seeing this and thinking that this is all part of this in-group dynamic of control and power, and they don't want to go against it. There's also the cool factor when you get into Hollywood and stuff like that. They just would rather look cool than earn money. But at the core, I think you have a disrespect for your customers, because at the end of the day, this is a capitalist enterprise. And, if you're not willing to meet your customers' needs and demands, then you're going to lose customers. There's probably a tipping point, I think, when, they lose so much money in customers that it'll rein back and you'll have a fixing element to it. But I don't know. We'll see.
And what a lot of people don't realize is, like, I'm out here in LA, and the new Chargers stadium that's being built, it's being subsidized by the taxpayers. And I really feel that if the viewers are really angry about this, they should go to their city councils, they should go to their city boards and their county boards, and they should cause a fuss, because then you've got the city politicians, the local politicians, on them. Like, I remember there was a couple of years ago, there was a situation where the NFL was trying to ban local broadcasts of teams that were subsidized by a city, and the Congress actually stepped in. This is actually surprising that they supported federalism, but they stepped in and said, no, you can't. Since the city subsidized it, you can't block local media from covering the football games, which makes perfect sense. And I feel like maybe if there's some action on that level, then it's not only hurting them in the ratings, now it's actually hurting them on the ground level, with the local fans. I'd like your thoughts on that. What do you think?
Well, any kind of grassroots movement to oppose, that's really where it has to start. It can't be from the top down, because it's just not going to be that effective. You have to have that movement going on there, and it can be very effective, but it does take time, and it takes a cohesion of people on the right who are opposing it. So there's such a powerful voice in the left through Hollywood, through the media, through pop culture, that's infused into the NFL, that's very loud. And so to have these groups fight back at these lower levels is going to take a lot of cohesiveness and a lot of organization. And that's why the left are the community organizers. That's not so much of a right thing, but we need to start being that way, not in the Alinsky sense, but definitely in a coming together and banding together and fighting what the fight is. But I agree with you, but it's just going to take some time. And it's going to take some organization and commitment and willingness to see what's going on. Most Republicans and most conservatives are working and doing their daily stuff. They're not really into making these social movements the way the left is. So,
and that's always been a problem with conservatives, is we tend to rally around important causes, right? But sometimes we forget. And Andrew Breitbart, used to say politics is downstream from culture, right? That was one thing conservatives seem to forget is. Sometimes the important fights are battles. They're not the war, they're battles. And let me ask you this. Do you think, how do we fix it? Because it seems like the NFL didn't get the message last time, and this season it's looking like it's going to be even worse for them. What do you think it's going to take to fix this whole thing, where football is something people can come together for and watch the Thanksgiving game or the Super Bowl? How do you think that needs to be adjusted?
I think a couple of things. I think the capitalist part of it needs to be continuing to hurt them. you know, because ultimately they are a business. So if they're, the bottom line is that at some point they're going to lose so much money that it's going to be, there's going to need to be a shift in the business choices that they make. So I guess continue to make those decisions. You know, don't buy the tickets, don't go to certain games. You know, whatever it is that you want to do to pull out, don't buy the products that they sell for the NFL. But also there just needs to be a bigger fight against the narrative that's being promoted, that we need to protest America, that America's racist. You know, the themes that are being promoted by the left, those need to be fought in the bigger culture war and in politics and all of that. And we really need to be loud and fight that and stand up for that. And, you know, when they say I'm kneeling because I really believe that, you know, the United States, that our justice system is inherently racist and systemically racist. No, it's not. You fight back. And for too long, conservatives don't fight back on that bigger scale. And that means talking to your neighbors. It means talking to your family. Yes, that means at Thanksgiving dinner, you may get uncomfortable because, you know, you have to challenge some people. But this is where we are. We've got to challenge this kind of thinking to fight back against the left in their messaging. So it has to be big, and then it has to also be these practical things that are going on.
And I really see that happening. One last question on this. Do you think Roger Goodell survives the season? Do you think that after the season he's going to go away, or do you think they're going to just be, you know, just continue to punish themselves? Disney just announced that they extended Kathleen Kennedy, who's now over Lucasfilms. After 3 horrible films, one good one, but 3 horrible films. Now I haven't seen Solo. Solo could be good. But after, I'll just say 2 horrible films, they're extending her her contract for 3 years. But and I'm like, oh, are they just angling to lose money? I mean, at this point, George Lucas could probably buy the company back. Do you feel that the NFL is going to make that same mistake with Roger Goodell, because they not only re-signed him for this season, they gave him a raise? And he, you know, in his absence, do you think that they're just that's gonna happen again, or do you think that this season does him in?
I think we can't rule out personal relationships, and you know, I don't know what's going on. I don't like making these kind of predictions because I don't know what's going on behind the scenes and what kind of relationships that he's formed, where he has his knit. Right. He may have a whole tight knit group that's not going to, you know, bring a change. So, you know, the same way that's probably what happened at Disney. I mean, she probably knows a lot of people. They're all probably really tight and have each other's backs. And, you know, it becomes more of a subjective and personal thing then, and not so much about the money. And we see that in business offices. You know, why don't you fire that person? They're horrible. They're terrible. But I like them. They're my buddy. They're my friend. They've been here a long time. They know how to do it. You know, we don't want to, you know, rock the boat too much. So there's a lot of factors, you know, that go on behind the scenes. I don't want to guess. I don't know.
Yeah, that's fair. And, you know, because people were saying the same thing when Ron Perlmutter was in charge of Marvel, Marvel Television. He for a while, I don't think he's the CEO anymore at Marvel, but for a while he was the CEO of Marvel. I don't think he is anymore. He's still somehow involved, but he was over Marvel Television for a while, and he's the one who really pushed the Inhuman spinoff from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which was awful. And Kevin Feige basically stepped in when, because Disney bought Marvel, and they basically told Kevin Feige, you don't have to listen to Ron Perlmutter. It's fine. You know, I don't think they fired him, but they just told the direct people, don't worry about it. You're good. You're good. So it could be a situation like that. Maybe they're making her more of a figurehead, and they're going to put someone else as the creative officer, like they did with Joe Cascata for Marvel Television. It could be something like that. You know, like you said, you never know. But back to the real world, not the world of comic books and Star Wars, but we had. Originally, I don't usually like talking about politics on this channel, but what happened last week was just so important. I felt like it needed to be talked about. In fact, when we were talking about the topics, I was like, oh, I don't really want to talk about Brett Kavanaugh, but just this whole week and Brett Kavanaugh's passionate opening statement when they brought him back in for what I call a kangaroo court. Just so for those of you who have been living under a rock for the past couple of weeks, President Trump nominated a DC Circuit Court judge, Brett Kavanaugh, as a Supreme Court nominee. His initial hearing went pretty much without a hitch. The Democrats were trying to bork him. That didn't really work. So then Dianne Feinstein's, somehow this letter that Dianne Feinstein had received from an accuser of Brett Kavanaugh got leaked. And they wanted the accuser, a woman named Christine Ford, to come back and testify. And she kept delaying because first she was afraid to fly, but then somehow she went on a vacation to Hawaii. So for 10 days, 2 accusers later, both of whom are completely non-credible, whatever you want to say about Dr. Ford, all their accusations are not credible at all. He comes back, the media is smearing him, and he does this fiery statement and also addresses the senators on the Judicial Committee with a little bit of defensiveness, but I think it was warranted. What did you think of his performance? I don't really. I have some unpopular opinions about Dr. Ford's testimony. A few people at the Daily Wire were telling me, you can't really say that, Jacob, what you're actually thinking. yeah, I know exactly. But
don't say, I have some unpopular opinions about her.
Oh, share them, please do.
I watched the whole thing, and I watched it and went back and rewatched her testimony, which a lot of people are saying she's very credible, but she didn't have the facts to back up her story. I don't think she was credible at all.
Right.
I thought I saw a whimpering woman who looked very nervous to be there, but someone who was inconsistent in what she had to say. She had to keep looking up at the committee. She had to keep looking at her lawyers for reassurance about the facts. There was contradiction. Her emotion did not ring true. I know a lot of people were all touched by that, but from one woman to her and a lot of women agree with me. I've talked to a lot of women this week, and we were like, no, that was just not sincere at all. And I'm really trying not to be partisan about that. I'm really just looking at her and how she acted, and it did not ring true. She didn't cite family members. There weren't friends around her supporting her. It was very strange and detached performance by her, and a performance is exactly what I think it was. I'm not saying something didn't happen to her sometime in her life. I think it happened in college. I don't think it happened when she was in high school, because she said a few things that were very inconsistent about the timeline. And but I do not think that it was anything like she said, or as traumatic as she said, or the time frame, or the people involved. Yeah, so that's my opinion about Dr. Ford.
Yeah, and it's like, when are people going to, because this is driving me crazy about conservatives, is they keep saying she's credible. What's credible about her? The fact, like I mentioned, the flying thing. They said that she said she was afraid to fly. She flew to Hawaii. They said that she
all over the place.
Yeah, exactly. And they said she had a polygraph. Her lawyer did it, who's not a trained psychiatrist like she is, I might add. And she was crying the whole time, which just
no tears.
No, yeah, exactly. And she said, "Oh, and my psychiatrist. I told my psychiatrist when me and my husband were getting some counseling, and so they released the notes. She says it's different, totally. The story is similar, but instead of 2 or 4 people at the party, now there's 5, and Brett Kavanaugh isn't even named. And I'm like, when are we going to? This woman isn't, to me, my humble opinion, I don't think she's credible. And again, I agree with you. Something may have happened to her in her past that she's." I can't really think that she's associating with this, but and also someone
to create a narrative.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, I don't even want to touch on the other 2 accusers. They are not credible. The fact that the third one has hired Michael Avenatti, who as her lawyer, that tells you enough about how uncredible that is. But going on to Brett Kavanaugh, just my own personal thoughts on it. I was watching it live. I thought he was impassioned. I did think he was angry, but to me, it was a righteous anger. It wasn't a like, I know it's SNL trying to make it like this fury, like they had Matt Damon imitate him, and they made him look like he was it was like a drunken anger. But I thought it was a righteous anger, and I thought he did a good job. What's your analysis?
I think it was honest and raw. I mean, just as much as hers was inauthentic, his was authentic.
Right.
And sometimes authentic is ugly. And when you've been accused of raping a woman, and in the other case, standing by with gang rape going on around you, and it's not true, and you have 30 years of a clean record, you're going to be mad. You're going to be angry. And especially when he's been hit and hit and hit about it. Not everyone needs to go up and be all cool about it. You know, the strangest thing, Jacob, is that the left defines everything. They went by emotion, right? So with Christine Ford, they're like, oh, she croaked her voice a little bit and did some fake tears and like looked like a little girl and did pretty poses and cutesy whenever she was challenged on anything. And I thought you were talking to an 8-year-old most of the time. It was very manipulative and it was very emotion, but everyone goes to the emotion to define it. And so they do the same thing with Brett Kavanaugh. They're like, oh, look, they're not looking at any of the facts. They're looking, oh, he has emotion. But for some reason, his emotion isn't valid or authentic. They're not looking about why he's emoting the way he is. Right. Well, look at her. If you want to play the emotion game, I'll talk to you about emotion all the time. I love working through intuition and empathy. Let's look at what she's saying and how she's acting. We can talk about emotion. I don't think her emotions were credible at all. I think it was a farce. I think it was a sham. I think it was a performance. He was absolutely angry. It wasn't a performance. And it was so evident. He shed tears. He blubbered, which he should have, because it's heartbreaking what happened to him. So, you know, so if you want to play the emotion game, fine. But his was more credible than hers. But at the end of the day, I don't want to play the emotion game when it comes to stuff like this. You know, I don't, because you can be manipulated by emotions. It's about facts. She didn't have the facts. And I want to say to every conservative, you cannot say in one side of your mouth that she was credible, and then on the other side, but I don't believe her story. I believe Kavanaugh. That doesn't ring true. So, you know, she isn't credible. Her story's not credible. It's okay to say she's not credible. Women are not sacrosanct. Right. You know, and they're not, you know, hidden behind the holy veil, and you can't approach it without fear and trembling. I'm sorry. No, we can approach them. She's come out. She's made an accusation. Treat her like an accuser and not just a woman. I don't know if her story's true or not. Right. I'm going to treat her as an accuser, not as a sexual assault victim, because I don't know if she's a sexual assault victim. And for all I know, she has no corroborated evidence. I just have her story, and her story is all over the place. Right. She said it happened in the early 80s, and that was scratched out on a note. It happened in the mid, you know, she said it happened in the mid 80s, then she changed it to the early 80s. I can't even keep up with it. But it was all not credible and not ringing true to me. And it's terrible what's been going on.
And what's even more angering to me is now the Democrats are all of a sudden so offended that he's angry. And it's like, excuse me, you've been smearing him for 10 days. And I think Kavanaugh pointed this out. Chuck Schumer called him evil. Chuck Schumer hasn't met the man. The Senate Judiciary Committee members have. Chuck Schumer hasn't met it, or maybe he has in some official capacity. I mean, he is a DC court judge, but I mean, in this capacity, excuse me, Mr. Schumer, no, he's not evil. You don't know that. There's no proof. There's no evidence. And, you know, people keep comparing him to the Roy Moore case. The difference between Kavanaugh and Roy Moore, now, you know, depending on how you look at it, Roy Moore at least had one credible person who had some corroborating evidence, who had people that knew her, who said he creeped out on her. I believe
there was no corroboration for the sexual assault.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and as I think it was Ann Coulter who pointed out about Roy Moore is, okay, yes, the man's a creep. I mean, he was, but in Alabama, 2 of the girls were 16, and that is the age of consent in Alabama, right? And so I think, so that eliminated 2 of them right away. But the other 2 girls, one of them faked evidence, right? Mm-hmm. And so really there was only one accuser who had a little bit of credibility through that whole thing. So yeah, maybe he shouldn't have been a senator, much less a judge early on. I don't know why they didn't come forward before that. Same as the case in Kavanaugh. But with Kavanaugh, everything looks like a tall tale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, and they all come at the last minute, don't they? Yeah. And that's the other thing that's you have to take it all in. All of the information, the timing, what all happened, why it happened, how it happened. I don't think Christine Ford expected to ever have her name in the public. Right. I don't. I think this is all shocking to her and scary and terrifying that she started out with just a letter to be able to undermine him, and it got out of control. It's like, oh no, there it goes. And now I'm here and I've got to deal with this. And, you know, they grilled Kavanaugh horribly, you know, in that hearing and, saying, you remember getting drunk, don't you? You remember blacking out, don't you? Don't you? You remember that, right? And he's like, no, you did it in college, right? You remember doing that, and I'm like, they didn't do that at all with her, and we need to look at her as well. When you have he said, she said, you don't have evidence corroborating as evidence, you have to take character into it. I want look at what happened in the first time frame in the mid 80s. Where was she? What was she doing? How was she living at college? Did that assault really happen there? It had nothing to do with Brett Kavanaugh. That needs to be looked at a little bit more and challenge her. But no, we have to treat her with kid gloves, and she's a woman in the Me Too movement. We have to believe her. We are not children.
Right.
We are women. We are adults, and treat her as an adult, not as a little. We're infantilizing women. And
I actually wanted to ask you about that because in the 80s and the 90s, when second wave feminism, which I'm a big proponent of, was coming along and developing more accurately, I feel like the whole point of that was take away the fainting couches. We're adults. We're women. We don't need the fainting couch. But I feel like this third and now fourth wave, I guess now they're saying the intersectional is a fourth wave. I feel like they're saying bring back the fainting couch. You have a Russian feminist pouring bleach on men's genitals in Russia, and it's just kind of like, wait, I thought you weren't hysterical. That was kind of the point, but now I see this far left feminism is bringing that back. I mean, what do you think about that?
Oh, I hate fourth wave, fifth wave intersectionalism. It's insanity, is what it is. Well, it's Marxism at the core. Mm-hmm. Really, it's about power. It's about the struggle. It's about, group dynamics and identities and all of this. It's not about feminism. It's not about women. And back in the 80s and 90s and where the second wave, you had like Camille Paglia talking about, if you're going to go out and be sexual and jump into the sexual fray, put your big panties on and get in there and take responsibility for your actions. You can't have it both ways. You can't say, I want to act like a man and go do whatever I want to do sexually and then cry about it and whine about it. So if you're going to do it, take responsibility. This doesn't mean, I know people, doesn't mean that guys have the right to sexually assault or rape.
Oh, obviously.
We all know that. But we are talking about personal responsibility. We are talking about acting like grown-ups and also distinguishing the difference between sexual assault and being hit on. I mean, come on, give guys a break when they're in high school and college. I mean, they do stupid things.
Right.
But most guys are not.
Oh, I was a liberal in college. There you go.
Most guys are not sociopaths. They're not psychopaths who want to go around raping people. Yeah, so show each other a little grace about this and take responsibility, personal responsibility. Because if you want freedom, if you want the liberty that the sexual revolution promised, you have to have personal responsibility with that. And I'm afraid that feminism is going the same route as a lot of the civil rights Black movement of wanting freedom, as Shelby Steele said, wanting freedom without the personal responsibility. And then when you want all the benefits of the freedom without the personal responsibility, and so you have to have a group to blame when you don't get what your freedom is promising you. And that's what we see. We see a whole lot of blame, male guilt going on, just like we had white guilt going on. And we really need to push back against that. And this Supreme Court nomination hearing and all that's going around is just, it is such a little petri dish of what that whole deterioration between the sexes and the whole male guilt that's coming along, that's destroying our society. And we need to be aware of it and fight back against it. And don't cower to it. It's just, men don't do it. Stand up. And I really call them the conservative women. This is the time for conservative women to be strong, libertarian women to be strong, because the sisters are getting out of hand. We need to rope back in the Yaga sisterhood because they're going Yaga. So,
and people like you and Ali Stuckey and Roaming Millennial and Dana Lash and Alicia Krause over at the Daily Wire. They've been Ash Show over at the Daily Wire. They've been really big and pushing that. I think Ali Stuckey recently got booed because she said, "Oh, just because Kavanaugh's accuser is a woman doesn't make her more credible. And she got booed in Texas. Of course, it was Austin, little California. But, it's yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm from Texas. The rest, it's hilarious what the rest of Texas thinks of Austin. Yeah. But anyway, it was it was. I totally agree with you. And what do you think happened next? Do you think that he's going to get appointed? And will Trump be able to appoint another man, a white male person? Or do you think we're going to, because Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Clarence Thomas, they're getting up there in years and they just may want to retire like Kennedy did. Do you, although I think Ruth Bader Ginsburg is going to hang on, but, just for argument's sake.
Clause to the very end. Not going to let go. I would not be surprised if, I don't know. I don't trust Flake, and I don't trust the people in the Senate. I hate to say that.
Yeah,
they're afraid of women. They're afraid of the Me Too movement. With the election around the corner, I could see them not confirming him. And of course, I think if they don't, I think Trump will turn around and nominate Barrett, female. So I think that's the only way to go. But she wouldn't get nominated because we have the. Wouldn't get confirmed because we have the elections, and I think that we're going to lose the Senate.
You think we're going to? I've heard that we're going to lose the House, but keep the Senate. You think we're going to lose the Senate?
That's my opinion, but I know I'm horrible at these. I did call the Trump election, but I'm not really good at midterms. I called him early on to a lot of people beating up on me about it.
I remember that because I actually got mad at you because I was a never Trumper. I was like, oh my gosh, DC McAllister, not you too. But
I was such a big Ted Cruz supporter. Everyone was so angry at me because I fought for Ted Cruz all through the primaries. I went in, I fought with Michael Cohen on Sean Hannity's radio program, debating him during the primary, standing up for, Ted Cruz. And then Ted, then we know how that story went. And then after that, I was like, well, here we go. I made the choice at that time that I wasn't going to allow Hillary to get in there. She's terrible. So, everyone's like, how dare you, Denise? You're such a strong conservative voice. I'm like, I still am. I see it's a different path, and I have to deal with what's the cards that are on the table.
Well, at least you don't have the shame of having to admit you voted for Evan McMullin. So there's always that bright side on that. I supported Evan McMullin, not because I thought he would win. I can admit that now, but I was just like so. For me, it wasn't so much a reaction to Trump, even though I didn't think he was a conservative, and I'm pleasantly surprised. When it comes to politics, I like being wrong. When it comes to comic books, not so much, but when it comes to politics, I like being wrong. But so at the time, I just thought he was such an unknown. And I lost friendships over it because I was a McMullin supporter. Although I actually hear Mindy Finn is actually a very pleasant person. She's a very straight-laced conservative compared to McMullin. So maybe I shouldn't be so embarrassed that I voted for the ticket. But
I think we all lost friends. I think there was it was such a mess during that time. I was never a Trump supporter. I never, in the sense
yeah.
I was definitely more of this is a pragmatic choice for me, whether you guys like it or not. And it was principled in my own way. And I also saw Never Trumpers in two different ways. I saw it as the establishment Never Trumpers in Washington who didn't want to let go of their, and I do think there is an establishment long-term.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, those. And then I think there was just the good grassroots Tea Party Cruz type supporters who just couldn't handle voting for Trump. I understand.
And that's exactly how it is. And most of those Tea Party people have started to support Trump.
Right. Whereas the other Never Trumpers will always be Never Trumpers, and they've lost their minds along with the left. So, yeah.
And it's pretty interesting because, like I said, I'm pleasantly surprised he has been a conservative president, and I'm pleasantly surprised about that. I'll eat crow on that. Michael Knowles, he and I would get into at the time I was writing for Conservative News, but it was connected to the Daily Wire. So I would talk to Michael Knowles all the time, and he and I would get into, because this is right after Trump got sworn in, and he and I would have these debates. Oh, and I would say, oh, you're going to see the real Trump. the liberal Trump is going to come out. But I honestly think, like we were talking about before, the insanity of the far left has forced Trump to be conservative. And hey, I'll take what we can get. I think that's a good thing. So, you know, especially one of the reasons I was suspicious about that was because of Ivanka. When he appointed Ivanka and Jared and brought them into the White House, I was like, oh, that's not good, because they're very outspoken liberals. But like I said, I'm pleasantly surprised. And I think that this hysterical leftism that we're seeing, it's forcing Trump, who I think was just kind of a run-of-the-mill liberal. I don't think he was like so far gone as Hillary Clinton even before that. But I really think that like that was a key thing. And I think we're going to see that more because the Democrats are just determined not to work with him. And what do you think about that? Do you think it's going to continue to bring out conservative policy from this White House as the left gets more and more crazy? Do you think that it's going to force people like I'm trying to think of a good example, like Jim Webb? Because basically Jim Webb, he was a Democrat, but he's basically a moderate now. I wouldn't call him a conservative, but he's definitely a moderate in his own party. What do you think about that?
Well, I think you'll see more of the lines being drawn, but I do think that it's going to push conservatives to be stronger. I hope so, anyway. And Trump is just more of a pragmatist. I mean, and if you make the case to him of what works, and the thing is, conservatism works,
right?
You know, and so when he sees it, I think he's drawn to it instinctively about some things. I mean, there are some things I think that, he's not convinced, and other issues. He's not this principled kind of, I wouldn't call him a principled conservative at all, but I think he's a pragmatic conservative.
That makes sense.
That,
no, that makes perfect sense. And now I always throw a curveball question to my guests at the end of when it gets down to the end. So this is the curveball question. Do you think Kavanaugh has a chance if Pence votes for him to be put on the Supreme Court?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if it came down to that, yeah, of course.
All right, that's all right.
Hopefully the conservatives will man up.
I'm hoping that too.
Me Too movement. I want them to man up. I don't want them to rape anyone. I don't think that's what that means. You know what I mean? Right. Yeah. Exactly. Any final thoughts before we go? No, I mean, just that we do need to actually stick together and realize I really want people to understand what the battle is. And I don't believe that there's this great civil war and that we're deteriorating, and going at each other's throats. But I definitely think that there's a cultural war going on that's intense, and it can become unraveling into something more serious. And we need to stand up. We really can't put on our nice little debate suits and stand at the podium and think that you were going to have that nice back and forth. We're just going to have to get out there. And I'm not saying do anything ugly or anything like that, but you have to stand up and mock them, challenge them, satire them away, so whatever you need to do, and debate as well. But we need to fight the good fight.
And that makes total sense. Denise, thank you so much for coming on, and to all my watchers. You can follow her on Twitter at McAllister Den, and of course check out the book that she co-authored, Spygate. And also, we've got some really awesome stuff coming up. I'm actually going to be attending the LA Comic-Con, so I'm going to do a video about that. And I've been promising it, and now that the last issue has finally come and gone, I'm going to do a full breakdown of Gotham White Knight and why it could possibly be the worst Batman story to ever come out. Maybe not quite the worst, but definitely one of the worst. Of course, you can follow me on Twitter at RealJacobAiry. Instagram is real.jacob.airy. You can find my political writings on thedailywire.com. You can find me on Facebook, author Jacob Airy. And of course, check out my blog, jacobairy.blog. I've gone to a daily. I was whenever I wanted to, then a daily, then a weekly, and I'm back to a daily. And I think it's going to stay a daily for a while, so definitely check that out. And of course, be sure to like this video, share it out, subscribe to Studio Jake, ring that little bell, and I'll see you next time right here on Studio Jake. Denise, thank you again so much for coming on.
Thank you. It was great.